Hello and welcome to Success is Never Accidental. I'm Lynn Payton and I'm passionate about helping organisations to get better results and the people leading them to feel more fulfilled. It's my belief that the key to success in any agency or endeavour is strong leadership. And on this podcast, I get to interview some highly successful leaders across all sectors and internationally so that you can better understand their formula for success and identify some of the common factors. But nothing changes without action. So each episode includes a challenge to you to reflect, evaluate, decide, and most importantly, to act and to do something differently going forward. My guest today, Lisa Ann Edwards, is an internationally recognised and award-winning safeguarding speaker, coach and author. She founded the UK's only national Black and diverse safeguarding professionals conference, and she hosts two global podcasts. With more than 25 years' experience in children's care and social work, Lisa Ann delivers powerful talks on well-being, anti-racism, leadership, personal growth, and business because all of our endeavours need to come from a business perspective. So, whether she's invited by leading corporate clients, public service sector, or grassroots organisations, her authentic approach creates a lasting impact on the audience. In today's episode, we're going to hear more about how she encourages, motivates, supports, and empowers professionals. So, please help me welcome Lisa Ann Edwards. Lisa Ann, thank you so much for joining us today. How are you?
I'm very well. Thank you for having me, Lynn.
Lisa Ann, your journey in safeguarding and social work spans more than 2 decades.
Mm.
What originally drew you into this field and how has that purpose changed over time?
Well, this phase actually started when I was 14 years old and I was at school and they were asking us, what do you want to do when you're older? I had no idea. I thought I'd be a singer. I was very much into creative arts. I thought I'd be a graphic designer, all these different things. And I ended up taking this test. It was a non-verbal test for those who remember what that was back then. And the results of that test gave an outline of all the different things that I should be doing. It came out with hospitality, it came out with customer service. And I thought, you know something, I don't know anything about that. Let me just go and do childcare. Now, fast forward, my journey began in early years, and then it moved into safeguarding work with domestic violence victims in refuges, Barnados, and that I moved then into nursery management work by the age of 22. From there, that's where I got the real taste of safeguarding. I'd always had safeguarding training, but in terms of local authority connection, that's where it began. And as a result of that, I went into social work. Now, I say all of that to say this. When I moved into my new home, perhaps a few years ago, I found some paperwork, and this paperwork was this test that I'd taken at 14 years old. I thought, oh, let's have a look through this. This is exciting. And as I flicked through and looked through hospitality, customer service, right underneath that was social worker. So I would say that I haven't chosen safeguarding. I haven't chosen safe social work itself. It chose me.
I'm a huge believer in if you just let the universe help you, it often guides us where we need to be. And you're such a big personality now, and you embody really all of those different aspects. I'm a huge believer in personality profiling as well, Lisa.
Agree. I am too.
So you've built a remarkable platform nowadays, though, that champions diversity, well-being, and especially leadership. What personal or professional experiences help shape your mission?
Well, starting in social work, if we go from that experience, and even before that, I've been on the receiving end of microaggressions and racism and not being treated very well in the workplace. And that had continued throughout my social work career. It didn't define it, it wasn't a feature in every role that I had, but I've had that experience. Now, in the midst of those experiences, I studied to become a performance coach with NLP. And that was born from me being burnt out in social work on the phone to my friend Paula, who said, in not so polite terms that I'm going to share with you, Lynn, what's the plan going to be? And as a result of that discussion, I then went on to become a coach, had a private practice whilst working in social work. Now, these experiences have really shaped me because I've had that one-to-one experience with other social workers from students right up to head of service, and I still do that now. I was coaching in lunchtimes, coaching in the evenings. So I've got a really good understanding, notwithstanding my own experience, of what is happening for social workers out there in the workplace. And as a result of that, I recognize that my experience wasn't isolated. Everyone is having similar, different, or the same experiences. And I knew that doing one-to-one work, whilst effective for that one person, there are actually power in having a community that surrounds that one element that we all share in common. So that's where the Black and Diverse Safeguarding Professionals Conference was born, because I wanted to build a community around A, my experiences, but B, the experiences of others that I was living vicariously through these coaching sessions.
Well, tell us a little bit more about how the conference has evolved, the kinds of themes that come up typically at your conference, and what's your reach nowadays.
Mm. So the conference started with two sponsors last year, and we had 11 to 12 speakers last year and one stage. We had 100 visitors last year, plus we had a Black-owned business marketplace. We had about 25 or so businesses that came along. This year, we have government representation. So England's chief social worker, Isabel Trowler, she supported the event. We had Minister Jess Phillips, MP, support the event. And we had Councillor Marian Khan support the event. We had other politicians and councillors who wanted to join, but there was no space, unfortunately, so perhaps next year. So it's reached the highest levels of government in the social work arena, and I cannot ask for more. We also graduated to have 10 sponsors this year from two last year. We had three stages this year where we had one last year, and we had 180 tickets sold for this year where it was 100 last year. So it has grown exponentially.
Now, the theme of this podcast, Lisa Ann, is success is never accidental.
Mm.
So tell us a little bit about what were the fundamental ingredients for you making that massive, massive impact from one year to the other, and particularly attracting government attention?
Mm. So the fundamental ingredient, I would say, is grit. Behind the scenes, Lynn, I am 80% in my pajamas and dressing gown, hair not washed or brushed until it needs to be on the weekend, simply because it is hard work. That's the only way I can describe it to you. It's not an accident because it's hard work. There's strategy behind it, there's a vision behind it, but it is sheer hard work. And I couldn't do that without my faith. You know, I do very much rely on my faith. I am a Christian, and I rely on my faith to show me the vision and direct me in the way I should go. Who should I approach? Where should I be having the event? How am I going to be leading the event? What does the event need this year? What are the main themes coming out from coaching sessions and online, and what's happening politically? So it's really about absorbing everything that's happening around you in order to create the perfect conference. Coming back to your the theme element as well from the previous questions, some of the themes are born from what is happening outside of the coaching sessions. For example, we have the disaster in Jamaica, for example. So if we were to take that example and say, okay, social work BASWA have come up with a plan to support, and then that may form part of what I do for the BDSC conference. So the themes coming out of the conference, and then I'll lead into the government attention. Mainly, the biggest one with a capital B is belonging.
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 Yeah, because people feel when people get anxious, when they're under stress, it becomes a very isolating experience. And as you said earlier on, as social workers, we've all dealt with aggression because we're dealing with people in highly volatile situations a lot of time. We're conveying messages people do not want to hear. And we are sometimes working with them at their most vulnerable. So we are inevitably, as our doctors, nurses, psychiatrists, police officers, all of the people in those professions could be potentially the target for aggression.
Yeah.
So it
To
can
be,
just,
may I just be more specific around that? Microaggressions is specifically around racial microaggressions. And those racial microaggressions don't just happen from a family perspective, they happen in the workplace, very much more in the workplace than it does with the families. Most of the stress that social workers walk into a coaching session with is not because of families, it's because of the amount and volume of workload. But
yes.
the majority of the stress actually comes from the relationships that they have or don't have, as the case may be, with those that they work with. And that can have the added dynamic of racial microaggressions. And people can very much take that for granted, the level of impact and the depth of destruction that can cause over a period of time. So I think it's important that I make that distinction, and that links beautifully as to why the belonging element is so strong coming from this conference. So the conference is very much about a professional from the global majority accessing wellbeing support, accessing a place where they feel that sense of community, and of course having that belonging. And that's achieved through Black owned businesses, global majority businesses. We have workshops, and those workshops are tailored just for them. So we had a lady come in who does counseling that is from the African background, and she only does oh, there's a certain name that she uses for it, and it escapes me now. But it's simply anyone from an African and Caribbean background, and they can access this because it's about decolonizing what's generally known out there. So it is specific to the audience that come along. Now, notwithstanding, that also includes allies. Now, this is the beauty of this conference. It is open to our allies because we want allies to learn. If allies are not in the space and not hearing what's happening, how are we going to understand and unpick some of the unconscious bias and the privilege and all those elements that come along with it? So it is open to everyone, but it primarily serves the global majority. And that's the reason why the government are very much attracted to it, because they understand the power of us coming together and being empowered. We are, as Black social workers, there's stats that Social Work England have put out there saying we are 40% less likely to get a promotion or be in senior management. Isabel Trowler put out some statistics as well, noting that senior managers are mainly white majority, very little of global majority within that. So there is a problem, and the conference is there to try and address the problem and look at ways we can develop.
That's absolutely fascinating. And when you talk about allies, it's so important you have government allies, but in terms of bigger picture strategic allies, who are you particularly targeting now? You've got the statistics, you've got the lived experiences. How do you share that more strategically?
That's something that I'm working on. So since the second conference, I've now developed BDSC into a CIC, and that will be the main strategy that is used to try and spread the wings a bit thinner rather than just one conference, albeit it has impact. We would like that to be spread out across the year, and the community interest company is going to be used in order to make that happen.
Excellent. And this issue has been tackled internationally as well, I would say, particularly in the United States of America. So I worked in Richmond, Virginia, in 1980. And at that time, I was the only white social worker in predominantly Black projects. And coming from Northern Ireland at that time, I had no experience of diversity because at that time, everybody was leaving Ireland. There were literally no immigrants at that time. But that I increased my awareness then of some of the issues that you're challenging now. Is there an international aspect to your work, Lisanne?
There will be, but not yet. I want to establish it here in the UK. It's the only conference in the UK that has this national reach. It's the only national conference for global majority safeguarding workers. And that covers fire, that covers education, that we had the police this year, we had NHS this year, we had community workers on the ground, charities. So it covers anybody in safeguarding that is from the global majority. So I believe in establishing a rhythm here. And my next step, of course, we've got the CIC, so we need to establish that next year. And then certainly we'll be looking at further reach. And I'm more than open to people if they want to contact me in relation to that, because it's very important that we try and take it further from where it is.
Absolutely. And what are some of outside of the microaggression, how are you helping people generally cope with burnout, moral fatigue, which potentially, I think nowadays is a real concern, that there's just that sense that people wonder, why are we still doing this? I come across that an awful lot with the people that I'm coaching. It's just like we work so hard, we give it our all, and nothing's changing. So tell us a little bit about your experiences and what works.
So what I'm providing is one-to-one coaching. I have downloadable resources. I have two podcasts, Dear Social Worker and Dear Christian Social Worker, and I host events, the Empowering Social Workers Conference and Social Workers Connect, and BDSC, the Black and Diverse Safeguarding Conference. So that forms under the umbrella called the Social Work Coaching Hub. So I'm trying to reach social workers in the many different ways. They're so busy, but in the many different ways, whether it's through listening, reading, or connection at community events.
Fabulous. And of all of those resources, what are you getting? What kind of feedback are you getting? What is the most powerful?
I'd say the most powerful, without a shadow of a doubt, is events. The coaching sessions, the clients that I have, they absolutely adore that space and time to think, breathe, grow, and all the things that come along with coaching. They love it and adore it for themselves. But in terms of real impact beyond one person, it must be events, because it's an opportunity to connect. It's an opportunity to share those experiences with others, be empowered. That's why we have the Empowering Social Workers Conference, because it's about us being able to share those experiences. A problem halved is a problem shared. So being able to pull together speakers from academics, we've got business owners from social care, we've got those who are creating their own tools and who are social workers, and they come along. So we've got this melting pot of talent, skills, and resources turning up at this event, and everyone is just like, oh, this is fantastic. Thank you so much for taking the time to put this on.
So, if you had to give a piece of advice to social workers, maybe people just starting in their career as a social worker, what is one piece of advice that you would give them?
Mm. My one piece of advice, it might sound cliche, but learning who you are, learning you, what works for you, what you need, who you need, is the cornerstone of your practice. And I say that from personal experience and professional experience coaching others. For example, if you are someone who naturally avoids conflict, if you're someone who procrastinates, for example, if you're someone who struggles with pressure and you make quick impulsive decisions under pressure, that's going to show up in your practice and will have an impact on how you're viewing a family, assessing a family, and more importantly, how you're managing risk. And it can increase risks inadvertently. So I would say learning what you need, learning you, learning how you respond is going to be your kryptonite in social work. You can be taught practice. You can be taught what you don't know. You can be taught the Children Act and all these things. You can be taught that. But there is something about you knowing you and that being balanced beautifully with how you show up in practice. I would say that is where people need to focus their energy.
And like you, I'm NLP trained, and a big part of that is actually working on yourself, isn't it? So that you exactly do what you just said there. And also, I've done every Tony Robbins course, was on the faculty there for many years. And in every event, it was as much about working on yourself as it was about providing space for other people to be safe. But our show is called Success is Never Accidental, Lisa Ann. What does success mean to you personally? And how do you stay aligned with it?
My success needle moves, if I'm being honest. Success is something which to me is ever changing. Priorities change and business priorities change. And I think the pinnacle of success for me amongst those changes, if we're really just really pointing that one thing out, it will be being aligned with God's will for my life.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. And how can people get in touch with you?
You can contact me on LinkedIn, Lisa Ran Edwards. That's Lisiran. You can contact me on Instagram, same name. You can visit the podcast on any of the platforms, Dear Social Worker. And by all means, if you would like to send me an email, info@socialworkcoachinghub.com.
You're doing amazing work, Lisa, and thank you so much for spending time with us today and for sharing your wisdom and insights.
Thank you very much for having me, Lynn.
What an incredibly driven professional. And some of the insights shared by Lisharan are really fundamental. First of all, she said grit is the requirement for success. Her successful National Black and Diverse Safeguarding Professionals Conference has gone from strength to strength in just 2 years, but because of a combination of vision, strategy, and faith, all underscored by grit, hard work, persistence, and action. While she said, while everyone in the safeguarding space can face everyday challenges of volume, overwhelm, aggression, and isolation, it's the challenges within relationships that is so disempowering for Black and other minority workers. By building a community of Black and global majority professionals, Lisa Ann is building awareness of the extent and impact of microaggression and empowering leaders to challenge it. In addition to one-on-one coaching, Lisa Ann said events are so powerful because belonging is such an important aspect of well-being. And when asked for her advice for new professionals, she said, learn who you are. What works for you? How do you respond in difficult situations? What do you need? Who do you need? My challenge for you this week is to reflect on Lisa Ann's advice and work on yourself. Ask yourself these questions and you'll be amazed at what you learn. You can find more about Lisa Ann Edwards and the amazing work she's doing on LinkedIn. And her name is spelled LE''SIRAN Edwards. So do support her and follow her on LinkedIn. And remember, success is never accidental.